Every week. Welcome back.
I'm happy to be back.
Welcome back to the Jägermeister Workbench. This is where you make your living.
Yeah, well, I got to try to talk about 3 different snappers in this little time frame. So we're going to start off with the yellowtails, and I set this rig up here for this is a typical yellowtail snapper rig. I kind of learned from Randy Tao.
Yeah.
I went down there and fished with him. We don't catch a lot of yellowtails up here where I live in the Cape Canaveral area, but we use little fish finder rigs. This is a little hookup jig, 16th ounce. And we were putting, a bunch of chum out. He brought a lot of chum, so we had chum going on some nice patch reefs and about 50 feet of water. Always had to have current. If we didn't have a good current, we weren't getting bit. So that was one of the things that Randy, every time we'd stop at a place, he'd check and see if we had some current first before we'd start fishing. And once we decided we had some current, then we'd start putting our baits out.
So what are we going to put on this?
Well, we would put a little a line slider on there.
A silver side?
A silver side.
Uh-huh.
A little silver side on there, or a shrimp.
Oh, okay.
We would put even a live shrimp on there backwards, just so his head's facing the other way, and put him on tail first.
Right.
And let it drift back with all the chum. And usually once he got deeper, that's when you get the yellowtail bite. There'd be a bunch of little other stuff sometimes pecking on it, but as soon as you got down deeper a little bit, that's when you get a good yellowtail bite, and it'd crank. The biggest one I ever caught was a 5-pounder in West Palm. I caught it on a whole ballyhoo. So when a yellowtail gets big, it will eat big things. I caught one that was a monster on a double hook ballyhoo on a headboat out of West Palm. I gave it to my future and father-in-law, and I think that's why I got married, because I gave him that big yellowtail snapper. If I'd have gave him a pot of gold, he wouldn't have been as happy as he was with that big yellowtail snapper.
So Dave, one key thing. Is there one thing you can do to increase your odds? Everybody always says just keep it going, keep it going, keep it going. As soon as you stop it from drifting.
I always let it go and let it go and let it go until I hit the bottom, and then I'd start all over again. Obviously, there's a lot of little tricks to use to get your chum dispersed from the top to the bottom. A lot of guys will put their oats in their chum. You can use a different size chum bag. All the chum bags come, you can see they have different mesh sizes. You got a larger mesh size and a smaller. If you want your chum to last longer, you put it in a smaller size hole. And if you got a ton of chum and you wanted to get it out real quick, use a bag with a larger hole in it.
Now all this chum is same approach for mangroves over on the Gulf. Or anywhere. So
right.
Let's talk about mangroves.
Well, mangrove snappers, you're usually going to catch those instead of out on a patch reef in real clear water. You can catch them in the backcountry. They're like the panfish for saltwater. Now this hook and this rig is for fishing for mangroves, black mangroves. We call them black snapper, offshore at night in 100 feet of water. An adult mangrove snapper has gone from the little fish that we're trying to catch for our kids, that weighs 1.5 pounds in the backcountry, to 10, 12, even up to almost 20 pounds. We catch them in Cape Canaveral at night.
Wow.
Yeah, and like you say, you chum and chum and chum, you can get those snappers coming up pretty good. Even a black snapper will come up a little bit off the bottom at night. And then you don't really have to worry about all your terminal gear as well. You can use a lot heavier stuff. But anytime you're going to be snapper fishing for any of them, for the muttons, the mangroves, or the yellowtails, it's best to use a fluorocarbon leader and the smallest line that you can get away with. Now, this is the bait that I'll use when we're offshore trying to catch the big snappers. We'll use either a whole live one or a cut one that's not, a larger one cut in half. But I like to use a big whole live one, and there are plenty of bridges in the intercoastal waterway where the water gets deep enough, 40, 50, even 60 feet. You can catch big black mangrove snappers on those bridges with big pilchers, live pilchers. You just let them go all the way to the bottom and then let them eat. And use a big circle hook and let them eat, and then start winding. Let them eat for as long as you can, because if you start jerking on it, you're going to come back with a lot of heads and no snappers.
That's good advice. That was the fastest 4.5 minutes.
It went pretty quick.
Man.